Secondly, the manufacturers are clear that some of the potential side effects can be very serious. We're talking about potentially pancreatitis, let's get my word out, and also it lists as a potential side effect thyroid cancer. Arguably, it's called the gamble jab, to be honest with you, because of these potential side effects at the moment. And then thirdly, I come back to the parents. Where are the parents in all of this? Because they are the role models. So it really is about parenting, and it's about parenting from being a role model yourself in terms of being slim and healthy, and not expecting a jab to take your place and other people to take your place. If you have children, they are your responsibility. Think before you breed. The other thing you need to remember with this is when you stop taking that jab, it is highly likely that you're going to put all the weight back on. Now, the thought of a child of 6 years of age, starting with that jab, conditioning them mentally to live with that jab, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely not on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Friday the 4th of October, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akweer.
Good morning. Now, a new clean era. Chancellor Rachel Reeves pledges £22 billion, I've heard that figure before, in the government's biggest green spend of this parliament. It will fund carbon capture projects. We'll explain what they are and debate it as, is it a waste of money or essential to meet our climate targets?
And Britain gets smaller. Argentina's promised to gain full sovereignty of the Falkland Islands. That's after we surrendered control of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Boris Johnson, remember him? He gave this reaction to GB News.
It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Why are we doing this? Sheer political correctness, desire to look like the good guys, a desire to look as though we're unbundling the last relics of our empire.
Now Harry is riding solo. Prince Harry was reunited with his close friend Prince C on his trip to South Africa, but Meghan is nowhere to be seen.
And here's a debate. The COVID kids. Children, apparently, are arriving at reception, school, unable to talk, wearing nappies and still using buggies. That's the shocking warning from a former children's star.
And this Sunday, it's National Grandparents' Day. And the soap actress Sherry Houston joins us shortly to tell us what it's like to become a nana. I know all about that. That's what her grandchildren call her. Oh, what it's like to be a nana. Oh, it's such a...
What is it like to be a nana?
Well, I mean, look, it's good. It's strong.
Empowering.
In Africa, in Ghana, actually, nana means chief, boss. That's what it means.
Well, that certainly lives up to your name. Boss lady.
That's what it's like.
Action-packed shows today. £22 billion. Where have we heard that figure before? The carbon capture project over 5 years. Essentially, if you don't know what it is, they will be capturing carbon emissions from power plants and so on, and then burying it under the sea.
I mean, look, I'm sorry. Does that sound a bit odd to you? It's carbon dioxide, carbon. It's carbon. The planet is built up with carbon. I'm not convinced that carbon is the enemy, but we have some experts to give their view as well. And send us your thoughts as well. Post your comments. gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom just after 9:30. And we start this hour in the Middle East. Massive blasts have rocked Beirut overnight as Israel launched its most intense airstrikes so far on the Lebanese capital. This was the moment a giant explosion was seen near Beirut's airport. Well, in the past 24 hours, 46 people are known to have died across Lebanon as Israeli forces escalate their ground operations in the south of the country, clashing there with Hezbollah fighters. Meanwhile, Israel's also preparing for what it calls a significant response to Iran's recent missile attacks as tensions rise across the region. And in Gaza, airstrikes there have pushed the death toll to now over 41,000 since the conflict began. And we're just hearing, in fact, from the Reuters news agency that the UK government has committed to increase humanitarian support for Lebanon with an additional £10 million to respond to the displacement of people there. So we'll keep across that for you, that latest line just into us. Here, though, another flight carrying Britons fleeing Lebanon's spiralling conflict has landed in Birmingham today. It's the second UK chartered plane to arrive, with more flights planned as Israel's attacks on Hezbollah and Iranian-backed forces continue. The government's deployed troops to Cyprus for a potential military-led evacuation if Beirut's airport does close. And that comes as G7 leaders are urging restraint, condemning Iran for destabilising the region. In other news, the government's being warned its deal to return the Chagos Islands to Mauritius puts more overseas territories at risk. It comes as Argentina's now pledging to gain full sovereignty over the Falkland Islands. However, Britain insists its commitment to the Falklands is unwavering. Well, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson told us he thinks that Chagos deal is crazy.
Yeah. Chagos Islands being given back to Mauritius. Your reaction?
Crazy. I mean, I urge viewers of GB News to get out your maps, get out your atlases, check out the Chagos Islands, see where they are, see where Mauritius is. A long way away.
Yes.
What is this claim? It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Why are we doing this? Sheer political correctness.
Sir Keir Starmer says the government's new £22 billion funding package for projects that capture and store carbon emissions is, he says, a game-changer. Labour says the two projects in Merseyside and Teesside, known as carbon capture clusters, will create thousands of jobs, bring in investment and help meet climate goals. However, climate campaigners are warning the move could prolong oil and gas production, with those two projects not set to begin storing carbon until 2028. The Health Secretary is calling on GPs to help make the NHS fit for the future, urging an end to their collective strike action, something he says is only punishing patients. Well, Wes Streeting is currently speaking in Liverpool at the Royal College of GPs conference, highlighting there the government's commitment to hire 1,000 new GPs and pushing for collaboration to rebuild the health service. It comes as new figures today from August have revealed that 1 in 20 GP appointments were either online or via video, sparking debate over whether it increases access or compromises patient care. Young voices must be heard. That's the message from Prince Harry during a trip to South Africa representing his youth HIV charity. On that solo visit to Johannesburg, the Duke of Sussex called on global leaders to close the digital divide and provide safer internet access for the global south. His visit followed a stop to Lesotho, where he reunited with his charity's co-founder, Prince Siso, and met with the nation's leaders there. Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup just after 10 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning to you. Hope you're well at home. Congratulations, it's Friday. You made it.
No,
nearly
Friday.
the weekend, nearly there. Have you had a good week?
I have actually. I've not done too much this week. I've relaxed.
Same as me. And I was just telling Ellie Costello off air, I've had 3 or 4 days not working, and I feel a bit. The first day's fine, but then the second and third days I feel a bit redundant and lost. It's been nice spending time with the kids, but I've realised I like being at work.
Yeah, I bet you do. Well, hello to you and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Ben Leo and me, Nana Okwere.
So the big story of the day, of course, is this £22 billion figure, not the black hole.
No, another 22 billion. That's just their favourite number.
Another 22 billion. So this carbon capture project, the government's pledged £22 billion of your money to fund projects as it races to reach its climate targets.
Now, the huge sum of money, which is the same as the other black hole, will be used to fund carbon capture projects in Merseyside and Teesside. The Prime Minister says the move is reigniting our industrial heartlands by investing in the industry of the future.
But what exactly are these carbon capture clusters, and are they a waste of money? Well, we're joined now by former Chief Executive at Energy UK, Angela Knight, who hopefully will explain more and enlighten us. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
First of all, what is carbon capture? How does it work practically?
Okay. Can I just say first that this is the second time this has been announced. It was also announced maybe 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years ago.
I remember, yes, yes.
And by the way, the last time Ed Miliband was Energy Secretary, which I think was 2009, something like that, he announced carbon capture and storage then. So you could argue it's the third time.
Right.
And it also tells you that Rachel Reeves is going to bend the rules or change the rules on borrowing, because otherwise you can't go and borrow this money if you've got a black hole which you're trying to fill with cutting off winter fuel allowance and a few other things. Right, that's my preliminaries. Now, what is carbon capture and storage? Well, what it is when the fumes, if you like, come off a plant where there has been some form of combustion usually, and there's carbon dioxide as a gas. Now, if you collect that carbon dioxide in a place and then you pressurize it and you pump it away and pump it down underground, which is where it normally goes, then that is actually the physical way in which you do carbon capture and storage, because you've taken the carbon away in the form of the gas, you pressurized it to concentrate it into a sort of small amount, and they bung it down into the ground, often where there's an oil well, because that gets more oil, it provides the pressure to get more oil out of the ground. The reason they've chosen these two places is that if this is going to be anything like a commercial proposition, you don't just need sort of one plant, you need a whole load of plants, industrial plants, which for various reasons have got emissions in which carbon dioxide is part. And of course, our two great chemical areas in the country, one's around Merseyside and the other's around Teesside. So from a logical perspective, it makes sense. From an engineering perspective, it can be done. Yes, it does take CO2 away. I have not seen the economics there.
Do you support the idea and notion of carbon capture?
Yes, I do support the idea. There's a lot of ideas around this area which are completely barking mad or hugely ridiculously expensive. This isn't one of them. This does have some feasibility about it, but it isn't cheap. There's nothing in this area at all that is cheap. But there are others around the world who have got or are putting in place carbon capture projects, because realistically, we will still have to be burning natural gas and oil. You know, we are reducing our reliance on the hydrocarbons. We can't remove them unless you want to be a country which goes back into ages in which you don't have power, you don't have warmth, and so on, or you only have it intermittently because renewables only last for a certain period of time. If I may just add to that, though, if we are going to, or Rachel Reeves is going to, bend or change the rules about borrowing, for heaven's sake, get on with reliable backup. Get on with the small-scale nuclear power, because that's what we're going to be relying on. And we cannot, excuse me, we cannot be relying on our power to import it from continental Europe, because that will just put us back into a market where the cost will be huge.
Yeah, I mean, it seems we fumbled the ball when it comes to nuclear power. I remember 20 years ago, there was talks of building all these swathes of nuclear power stations, and we didn't do it. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed Davey had a part to play in that during the coalition, perhaps. But look, one of the projects of this carbon capture in Teesside, so apparently up to 2 million tonnes of CO2 emissions will be captured each year, and it's enough to generate 860 megawatts of electricity. That's powering 1.3 million homes. Excuse me for being maybe a bit ignorant on the topic, but why don't we just plant trees?
Well, you can do. And, you know, every time you book your flight, you can tick the box for some tree planting somewhere. We should do, actually, a lot of things. This is no magic bullet, and I'll be surprised, actually, if you do get some of those end results, which says it's X number of jobs and Y number of gigawatts or whatever of power. You know, that's like a lot of these calculations. They take them down a line to try and prove a point to an extent that can be absolutely ridiculous or never proved, or a mixture of both of them. So don't believe that end game. Believe the start there, that there is a practical project here. The cost, a bit unknown, except that there's going to be some public money borrowed, which means we're going to be paying for it, and we'll probably end up with it on a bill as well. Is it feasible? Yes, it is feasible. but it's only a small part of all this whole green agenda. And I come back to exactly what I say time and time and time again. There is no reason why we cannot proceed with small-scale nuclear power. There isn't. It's happening in other countries.
Okay,
it makes sense. Politicians have ducked it.
I want to get your view on shutting down of coal mines and now importing, so we have no ability to make virgin steel in this country, and then kind of importing it from another country because we're planning a pylon programme and solar panel programme, which will require quite a lot of steel, I should imagine.
Yes, it will require steel, and you're quite right that it will also require some what you call virgin steel, steel that is produced predominantly in blast furnaces, because if you have electric arc furnaces, which is what the replacement is, that uses steel scrap, and you can't necessarily produce every quality of steel that you need out of it. And anyway, we're going to have a gap of a few years where we're not producing our own steel. The reality in every proposition that is being put forward now, and indeed by other governments, is one which seems to look only at what is within our own country. And we need to look down the food chain, the supply chain, because the more and more we rely on imports, and those imports are often from quite tricky countries. Look at the position of Qatar for gas, for example. You've got to get through what is increasingly becoming something of a war zone. Look at where we're getting a lot of that, which we're using for our renewables, which is China. And we've got difficult relationships with China, and that is likely to get even more difficult. And what you see is that we cannot say it's just that which is within our boundaries. And we should think about it from that perspective. Reliance on imports is going to cause us a problem, and here as well in other areas.
Got it. Angela Knight, you are the former chief exec at Energy UK. Thank you for your expertise this morning and for joining us.
Right, well, up next, big smart from Prince Harry and on his trip to South Africa. Is that because he's meeting old friends, or the fact Meghan's not on the trip with him? Well, let you decide. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
True crime is everywhere.
Yeah, next weekend, CrimeCon UK takes place in London. And joining us now to tell us more about that event and the true crime phenomena is former detective Stephen. How do you pronounce your surname? Keogh. Sorry, Stephen.
That's all right.
I should have checked you before.
No worries.
And Nancy, and again, Nancy, what's your surname?
Bourne.
Thank you. I'm showing my ignorance there, but thank you both for joining us. So, Stephen, you're a former top cop. Hope you don't mind me describing you as that. At CrimeCon and other events like that, do you get into sort of the semantics of the investigations and, you know, how... For example, how I was watching something the other night where somebody was unfortunately murdered, but you saw the crime scene investigators trying to work out from which side the person was attacked from. Did the knife come from the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Is it all that kind of stuff?
So for me, everything I've done since I've left the police is about sharing that knowledge of investigations, because if you watch TV, they get it wrong a lot. So what we try and do, I'm not the only police officer there, there's experts, so forensic scientists, psychologists, all from that investigative world, just trying to get across, well, actually, this is how it's really done. This is what we do, not what you're going to see on telly. And I think that's really important. So for me personally, coming along to CrimeCon, I just look at the list of people that are there, honestly, and I'm proud to be associated with them. There are some fascinating people there, People have really fought for justice for their children. People are campaigning for victims, for survivors. So it's an event that when you look at the name, you might think, oh, they're just going to sit there talking about serial killers and what they got up to. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's really about what goes on, how it impacts the victims, how the investigations are carried out. It's educational as much as anything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 9:49. You're with Ben and Nana on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Now, Prince Harry has made another solo trip, this time to Johannesburg in South Africa.
He's called for world leaders to, quote, create a platform for young voices, as the Duke is there to represent charity Sensible, a youth HIV charity he co-founded.
Well, we're joined now by Charles Ray, former editor of The Sun. Charles, thank you very much for joining us. You know, when I see these things with Prince Harry, I think to myself, this is what you would have been doing as a working royal. I don't get it, really. And he actually seems a lot happier. A lot of people suggesting that it's because Meghan's not there. Well, what's your take on it?
I agree with that. The fact that Meghan's not there, I think, is a big plus for Harry. And it's really nice to see Harry again back to being the smiley guy that he always was, doing what he does best of all, helping his various charities, promoting those charities, helping to raise money for those charities. And it's just really great to see, instead of the whinging Harry that we've seen over the last few years, mainly with his wife. So it's fantastic. He's now gone to South Africa. Now, I actually don't think he's been in Montecito now for about 2 weeks, because he went to New York, first of all, to do a few things with the Bill Clinton charity. He then did a tattoo parlor, Jimmy Fallon show, then flew to the UK straight away to do the Well Child Award. Big hit there, very big hit there. And then went to Lesotho to visit his charity, Sentabali, the one he started in memory of Diana. And I don't think he's been there for 2 or 3 years, maybe a bit longer. And then I think from there is where he's gone to Johannesburg to continue this charity, to help raise funds and speak about a passion of his, which I have to say I'd agree with, the dangers of the internet for children.
Yeah, Charles, who's got the kids then? Are you suggesting maybe Harry's not seen the kids in 2 weeks? Because as a father, that's a bit of a stretch for, I don't know, normal people, normal parents. Who's got the kids?
Well, I'm not sure whether he's actually jetted back to Montecito. If he has, he's only been there for about two days. I mean, look, Ben, we live in an age where you've got FaceTime and everything else, so it's much easier to see your kids as well. I mean, you know, when I was a working journalist and away for a long time, I didn't see my kids for, you know, a couple of weeks or 3 weeks. But all I had then was the phone. We didn't have this sort of great new technology, FaceTime and all that sort of stuff. But I can't see where he went back to Montecito. He may well have done, but I can't see where he did. Now, Meghan's got the children. She's back in Montecito. She's obviously looking after them, as most mothers do in any case. And I think she's carrying on with her work for this stupidly titled American Riviera Orchard, which is all about jams and gardening, and a new Netflix program next year. And all I just hope and keep my fingers crossed is Harry stays away from it.
And so finally, how is all that going for her? Because I heard the last thing was that the trademark was denied because, because you can't trademark a place.
No, you can't. So those things are. This is Meghan. This is Meghan doing all this, and she's fallen foul of all this. I mean, she's spending her time. If you know that we've had these various warring magazines coming up with the allegations of her bullying again in this other magazine, interviewing former the people who've worked for her at Archwell saying glowing things about how she sits on the floor and prepares little baskets of goodies for them to take away. So I think she's been involved in all that sort of stuff. But in terms of actually doing, any what you would call old-fashioned royal job, she hasn't been doing any of that, which is great, to be perfect. I don't think we need to see Meghan anymore.
No, I kind of agree with you there, Charles Ray. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. That is
and you. Take care.
Charles Ray. Now, Boris Johnson has told GB News the public need another referendum. Another referendum?
Another one?
No.
As Brenda from Bristol would say, another one?
No. But can you guess what the subject is this time? Could it be the Chagos Islands?
Yeah.
What do you think it would be?
What about veganism? Should we go vegan?
He's not into that, is he? Listen, stay with us. Aidan has your weather. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Keep your thoughts coming. gbnews.com/your say.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start today for most of us. Sunny spells continuing into the afternoon, but it will turn increasingly cloudy and damp as the day progresses in the far northwest. In fact, already some light outbreaks of rain are pushing into the Western Isles. They'll reach parts of the far north of Scotland at times as well. Northern Ireland likewise seeing a thicker cloud and some light rain at times with a freshening breeze. But for eastern and southern Scotland, England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells, highs of 16 to 17 Celsius. So feeling pleasant enough, but perhaps with a bit more cloud cover compared with Thursday. We see those clouds persisting into the evening for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some persistent damp weather for western Scotland, but eastern areas, well, some late sunshine just before it goes down. Northern and central England, plenty of sunshine. Northern Ireland, though, a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of mostly light rain. Now, for the southern half of the UK, well, we'll see the cloud melting away into the evening, and under clear skies overnight, temperatures will fall away. Another chilly night's expected through the Midlands, eastern and southern and southeast England, but elsewhere, with thickening cloud and a strengthening breeze, and some outbreaks of rain pushing into Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's a milder night with temperatures staying in the double figures. So it's really only the east of England and some central parts where we'll see single figures first thing Saturday and perhaps mid-single figures in some spots. Then we'll see a lot of fine weather once again across England and Wales, but with a bit more of a breeze and some cloud coming and going through the day. There's still scope for some sunshine at times, and mostly the more unsettled weather stays at bay until after dark, but it will reach Cornwall and it will affect parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, feeling cooler here as a result.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in North Lanarkshire, the inside lanes closed northbound after an accident between junctions 4 and 5 from the M73 to Cumbernauld, causing queues. In County Down, the A20 is closed each way northwest of Grey Abbey after an accident, with queues each way towards there. Train services are suspended southbound from Macclesfield to Stoke-on-Trent after a train broke down at Congleton. In Bedfordshire, the A421 remains closed each way between the A6 and the M1 near Bedford because of flooding, with delays as you divert. In Buckinghamshire, the A404 is closed southbound off the M40 between High Wycombe and Marlow after an accident. The M4 from Berkshire into Wiltshire is closed westbound from junction 14 at Hungerford to 15 east of Swindon after an accident, with delays as you divert. On the M4 near Bristol, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 19 and 20 from the M32 to the M5, causing delays, and train services are suspended between Liscard and Loo.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Friday the 4th of October. We are live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and me, Nana Acquare.
Very good morning to you. A new clean era. The government is spending £22 billion to fund carbon capture projects in Merseyside and Teesside. Is this money well spent or just a load of hot air?
Then strategic disaster. Argentina has promised to gain full sovereignty of the Falkland Islands after Britain surrenders control of the Chagos Islands. Boris Johnson gave his reaction to GB News.
It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Why are we doing this? Sheer political correctness, desire to look like the good guys, a desire to look as though we're unbundling the last relics of our empire.
Elsewhere, Israel targets Hezbollah's next leader in a huge blast in Beirut overnight, as more planes are expected to evacuate Brits from the Middle East. Mark White has more.
Well, the international airport in Beirut remains open for the moment, but with explosions in the Hezbollah stronghold near the airport, that window is rapidly closing.
Leave or remain. Boris Johnson wants another referendum, and this time it's on the ECHR. How would you vote?
And this Sunday, it's National Grandparents' Day, and the soap actress Sherry Hewson from Corrie joins us shortly to tell us what it was like to become a nana. That's what her grandchildren call her.
Another referendum, ECHR. I mean, do you fully understand the implications? Do you think that can be put across to the viewers and people in this country what the implications of it are?
Well, some would argue that was the same situation with the Brexit vote. They accused Leavers of not knowing what they were voting for and what the implications would be.
I don't think it's the same.
No.
Because you can actually see what the ECHR does and you've already got it in action, whereas Brexit, nobody knew what exact shape it would take, but we know what this one is.
Yeah, and the argument is that there's already existing British laws that would replace the ECHR. It's just completely redundant in terms of what it protects. The only thing it does, according to people like Robert Jenrick, is put obstacles in our way for protecting our own borders.
Although there are some protections in it as well. So we'd make sure that we have to cover those protections in terms of women's rights and trans rights and all these sort of things that are within that legislation as well.
Could we deal with another referendum,
though? God.
Do you remember 2016? Oh, my gosh.
But the problem is they don't even want to go with the thing. So if it did end up that we are leaving, then we'd have the whole narrative, they don't know what they're voting for and all that. So
yeah. Uneducated, thick. Anyway, someone who's not thick is Sam Harris, who's got your news headlines. Francis.
A very good morning to you. It could be Sam Harris. This time, though, you've got Sam Francis. I'll be with you for the next few minutes, taking a look at the top stories. And we start in the Middle East, where massive blasts have rocked Beirut overnight as Israel launched its most intense airstrikes on the Lebanese capital so far. This is the moment giant explosions were seen near Beirut airport. Well, in the past 24 hours, 46 people are known to have died across Lebanon as Israeli forces escalate their ground operations in the south, clashing there with Hezbollah fighters. We've also heard a major road out of the country's also been hit, leaving a large crater near the border crossing into Syria, where thousands of people have been fleeing in recent days. Meanwhile, Israel's preparing for what it calls a significant response to Iran's recent missile attacks as tensions rise across the region. And in Gaza, airstrikes have now pushed the death toll to over 41,000 since that conflict began. Here, another flight carrying Britons fleeing Lebanon's spiralling conflict has landed in Birmingham. It's the second UK-chartered plane to arrive, with more flights planned as Israel's attacks on Hezbollah and Iranian-backed forces continue. The government's also deployed troops to Cyprus for a potential military-led evacuation if the airport in Beirut closes. It comes as G7 leaders have urged restraint, condemning Iran for destabilising the region. The government's being warned its deal to return the Chagos Islands to Mauritius could put more overseas territories at risk. It comes as Argentina's now pledging to gain full sovereignty of the Falkland Islands. However, Britain insists its commitment to the Falklands is unwavering. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson told us he thinks the Chagos deal is crazy.
Chagos Islands being given back to Mauritius. Your reaction?
Crazy. I mean, I urge viewers of GB News to get out your maps, get out your atlases, check out the Chagos Islands, see where they are, see where Mauritius is. A long way away.
Yes.
What is this claim? It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Why are we doing this? Sheer political correctness.
Sir Keir Starmer says the government's new £22 billion funding package for projects that store and capture carbon emissions is a game-changer. Labour says 2 projects in Merseyside and Teesside, known as carbon capture clusters, will create thousands of jobs, bring in investment and help meet climate goals. However, Green campaigners warn the move could prolong oil and gas production, with those projects not set to begin storing carbon until 2028. Inquests into the deaths of 4 British victims, including the tech tycoon Mike Lynch, are set to begin today after the Bayesian super yacht sank in August off the coast of Sicily. Lynch, his daughter Hannah and Jonathan and Judy Bloomer were among the 7 people who died when the vessel went down in a storm. The group on board were celebrating the billionaire's acquittal in a US fraud case involving the sale of his software company. Suffolk's senior coroner will open the inquests in Ipswich today, and 15 people, including Lynch's wife, survived that tragedy. The Health Secretary is calling on GPs to help make the NHS fit for the future, urging an end to their collective protest action, something he says is only punishing patients. It comes as new figures from August reveal that 1 in 20 GP appointments were either online or via video, sparking debate over whether it increases access or could compromise patient care. Well, speaking in Liverpool moments ago, where Streeting told the Royal College of GPs conference that collaboration is vital to rebuild the health service.
The 3 shifts that underpin this government's reform agenda, from hospital to community, analogue to digital, sickness to prevention, those shifts are not new ideas and they are not radical, but delivering them really would be. I can't do it on my own. I need every part of the NHS to pull together as one team with one purpose, to be the generation that took the NHS from the worst crisis in its history, got it back on its feet and made it fit for the future.
The world's first ovarian cancer vaccine being developed here in the UK could wipe out the disease, according to Oxford scientists. Ovarian Vax trains the immune system to detect and then attack the earliest signs of the disease. Cancer Research UK is backing that project, calling it an exciting step forward in cancer prevention. And although full approval is still years away, clinical trials could begin in the next 4 to 5 years. And finally, young voices must be heard. That's the message from Prince Harry during a trip to South Africa, representing his youth HIV charity. On that solo visit to Johannesburg, the Duke of Sussex called on global leaders to close the digital divide and provide safer internet access for the global south. His visit followed a stop in Lesotho, where he reunited with his charity co-founder Prince Siso and met with the nation's leaders. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Ben Harris.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
1-1.
Sorry, Sam. I apologise. Sorry, Sam Francis, not Sam Harris. He got me back though, didn't he?
He did, didn't he?
Meow.
Yeah, he's been thinking about that throughout the whole bulletin.
He was reading those bulletins thinking, I'm going to get him, that little so-and-so. A few emails coming in. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Ben Leo and Anna Aquir. Just talking about Prince Harry, I mentioned to Charles Ray, the former royal editor at The Sun, I asked... He suggested Prince Harry hadn't been home to Montecito for 2 weeks, perhaps, with all his recent work abroad. And I said, oh, has he not seen the kids for 2 weeks? I was a little surprised because it seems like quite a long time to go without seeing your kids. But a few of you have been in touch. Mo Chi, you said 2 weeks, a long time, Ben. Good job you weren't a child of a forces person. My dad was gone for years. And Jane, you said something similar. Come on, Ben. I like you, but lots of fathers don't see their kids. My hubby was in the army and did tours of 4, even 6 months. That's life for some. Don't make it an issue. I agree, but Harry's not in the forces, he's private jet millionaire. Well,
Joan says, I'm no supporter of Harry for trying to trash our beloved royal family, but I have to say he looks naturally happy on his own in Africa, no longer the underdog. I suppose so, because in a way he's not in the shadow of William in his head, so now he's doing his own thing, he's breaking out on his own and doing stuff. Robin on the whole Chagos Islands, sorry, he says that now Argentina vows to gain full sovereignty over the Falkland Islands after Starmer's surrender of Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Well, I'm sure it was Starmer, but he's obviously got David Lammy as the Foreign Secretary there, so, you know.
And the argument is it was James Cleverly who kicked off the negotiations, and Cleverly coming out yesterday saying this is an absolute disgrace. And Labour were quick to rebut him, saying, well, hang on a minute, it was you that kicked off the negotiations. David Cameron put the handbrake on it and said, absolutely no way. And Labour have just continued, apparently, what Cleverly kicked off.
Well, I don't, you know, what I think is with these things, this is not, it's our island sort of in terms of sovereignty, but there are people on the island. And I do believe that if you're going to allow the island to change hands, you should give the people on the island the final say, see what they think. Do they want to be part of another country rather than the United Kingdom? And then they make the decision, not David Lammy, a passing politician, or, you know, any of the others. Let the people decide. And I suspect they probably would have wanted to stay within the United Kingdom.
Yeah, that was the complaint from the locals. They were saying that in the Falklands, in Gibraltar, they had a vote, they had referendum, and or referenda is the plural, I think. But no one asked them in the Chagos Islands.
I just think it's disgraceful. Someone like David Lammy, Keir Starmer, and all the others coming along trying to change the lives of people who live in this environment without actually asking them what they would like. But what do you think? gbnews.com/your say.
Right, well, something else that Labour has caused controversy over is this new announcement this morning that the government is spending £22 billion to fund projects as it races to reach its climate targets.
Now, the huge sum of money, which mirrors the black hole, is used to fund carbon capture projects in Merseyside and Teesside. The Prime Minister says the move is reigniting our industrial heartlands by investing in the industry of the future.
So the big question is, are these carbon capture clusters money well spent or just a load of hot air? Well, we'll hear from Sir Keir Starmer trying to justify that later this morning. But before we hear from him, let's speak to the director of the Climate Media Coalition, Donncha McCarthy. Good morning, Donncha. Why don't we just plant trees, Donncha? What's the difference?
Well, actually, I think unusually, Ben and Nana, we actually might be on the same page on this one. It is very unusual for climate sceptics and climate scientists to be on the same page. They both think this is a total waste of money. It's a massive subsidy for the oil industry. Basically, BP and Equinor will get this money to allow them to continue burning fossil fuels in a power plant. So what we're doing, and that means we have to burn 15% more fossil fuels to produce the carbon capture. It's not a good idea. We should spend the money instead on two things. One is reversing the Tory cuts and insulation for people's homes to bring down pensioners' bills. And secondly, to invest in green hydrogen, not dirty hydrogen, which will enable the virgin steel jobs to be protected. And we could then continue producing green virgin steel in this new country and reduce bills for homeowners. This idea is not good.
When you say green virgin steel, what are you... a lot of people don't know what that means. What does that mean?
The problem with steel is for virgin steel is you need to use very high temperature coke. But you can, if you actually use hydrogen, that actually replace the coal. Now, to produce green hydrogen, you can reduce it by using renewable energy. At the moment, Britain dumps £1 billion worth of green energy from Scotland because it produces too much at times. That could be used to produce hydrogen that then produces green steel.
Has that ever been done before, though? Because
it's been done it's been done in Sweden. Green steel has been produced in Sweden.
Isn't the problem with that you can't do it at great quantities? So right now, a little bit here, a little bit there, but at great quantities is what it would be required.
We don't we don't need great quantities of virgin steel.
Yeah.
We do need great quantities of steel. Now, the exciting thing about what got lost in the debate about the electric arcs is the United Kingdom currently exports nearly all of our reclaimed steel to Turkey, which is really dirty. The new electric arcs will actually enable us to recycle all our steel and produce British steel in the UK rather than importing it back from Turkey. So that's a really exciting
steel
project.
That isn't virgin steel, though, because it can't...
Yes, but over 90% of our steel requirement is not for virgin steel.
So,
at the moment, we're importing millions of tons of non-virgin steel,
you need to have the ability to create your own virgin steel.
Yes, I agree.
And so this closing coal mines, unless you've actually got an alternative, seems a bit silly. Get the alternative, then close them if you're going to...
Yeah, well, what I'm arguing today is the government today could have announced a green hydrogen project that will produce green steel.
All right, let's get back to the conversation, though. So, in your view, why are these people obsessed with the carbon capture? Is there not another use for the carbon that has been released? Surely, instead of storing it, there must be some other way of using it rather than...
No, the problem... There are uses for carbon dioxide, such as is in greenhouses, etc. However, the problem with this issue is to capture carbon dioxide out of a gas is really expensive. So what you have to do is you have to actually... All of the emissions that come out of the power station have to go through a liquid, which then absorb the carbon dioxide. You then boil the liquid to release the carbon dioxide, to put it into a container. Then you have to compress super compress it back into a liquid, and then you store it under the ocean. Now, 75% of carbon capture storage projects around the world, what are they doing? They're actually pumping them into the ocean, under the seas, to push out more fossil fuels. It's a subsidy for the oil industry. It's mad.
Donica, what is the target ppm parts per million of carbon for green zealots? What are we aiming for here?
It's not for green zealots, for climate scientists. They believe that the safe historic level was 280 parts per million. The safe level for us not to go over was 350. That was passed in the 90s.
And we're now at what?
And we're now at around 420.
Okay.
It's terrifying.
And we're still here. The planet's still here.
No, what we're seeing, yes, the planet's still here, but what we're seeing is, for example, British farmers are being repeatedly hammered by extreme weather. Last spring, the crops were destroyed. So now this autumn they're being destroyed.
You can't blame that on.
So what are we aiming for?
We're aiming to stop the increase first, and then we may very, very slowly bring it back down to safe levels.
Yeah, but can I just ask you...
Which is 350. We don't want to get... We're not saying get back to the original 280.
Sorry, I'll stop you there.
I was trying to ask Ben's
I know,
question.
but the technicalities of it is all getting a bit detailed and people want to hear. I think people want to hear... surely the actual carbon capture process gives off quite a lot of carbon in its entirety. So just like the making of an electric car uses a lot of carbon to make this...
It uses a huge amount of energy. You cannot do carbon capture storage without investing extra energy. It's around 15% extra oil and gas will be burnt for this power station. It's mad. Look, the government mentioned that the articles today mentioned two companies that are actually in line to get this bung. One is Statoil, the Norwegian oil company, state oil company, and the second one is BP. Now, what will happen there is we're subsidising them to continue their old business as usual, with what we should be doing, like other countries are doing, investing in the industries of the future. I want to bring down bills for homeowners, and I want jobs for British steel workers. We could do that by spending this money on something
the reason
better.
I was asking about target ppm is what would reducing parts per million to 350 do to plant life and forestry on Earth and vegetables and growing plants? It's not conclusive to a thriving ecosystem, is it?
The original parts per million is 280. We're not saying bring it back to 280, which is what all our ancestors lived in, and life was absolutely perfect in terms of the balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide.
But do you understand the arguments and the concerns from, say, the farming industry, people who grow their own vegetables?
I think you're misunderstanding the role of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. What we're saying is what we need is a safe level of carbon to produce food and for human life. If we have no carbon on this planet, Ben and Nana, we would freeze. Exactly. We need carbon dioxide. Exactly. However, if we've got too much, we overheat. If we've got too little, it damages plant life and freezes us.
That's my point. People say 350 is too little.
No, it's not. 280 is the historic level. Yeah. We're not saying take it back to historic level.
And historic levels were also up to 2,000 ppm.
Yes, the historic level under The stable climate that we've had that's allowed human civilization to thrive has been in existence for 10,000 years. That would exist at 280 parts per million. If you're right, if we go down to 200 and 150, that would be disaster. But that's not what we're asking. We're not going back to even to what historic safe levels are.
All right. Listen. I don't think that we take into account things like homeostasis, where the planet itself decides to balance itself out in its own way. And I'm not so sure that this carbon capture is a very good plan. But what do you think? GBnews.com/You'll Say. Up next, the BBC insists they have nothing to announce about Gary Lineker's future on Match of the Day, despite claims that he could soon be leaving. Let's hope so. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Some controversial film news. Someone has hired an actor who's white. What the hell is going on?
Let me just fix my hair. Let me just come on. So, Wuthering Heights film stirs controversy after white actor, he's white, chosen to play Heath.
Is that your Humza Yusuf impersonation?
That is, that's my Chinese accent. Experts have gone, oh no, there's a lot of, in recent years, he's definitely black or mixed race because he was found in Liverpool. And as you know, everybody in Liverpool is black or mixed race.
No, I mean, have you read the novel?
God, no.
Right, well, I have. And the novel itself does say, quite explicitly, that he is dark-skinned. Yeah. That the implication is that he's of Romani origin. So he wouldn't be whiter than white, you know. So, I mean...
that's fine. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that casting... But on the other hand...
This guy's Spanish. His origin's Spanish.
Do you remember when there was a black Anne Boleyn for a Channel 5 miniseries? That seems to be more egregious, because, I tell you what, Anne Boleyn definitely wasn't black.
You racist. No, I almost feel sorry in this story because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't now. Because if they'd have, it's not like he's a bit of an anti-hero, right? It's not like a good all-round.
He's not a good guy.
So if you go, right, we definitely need to cast someone black for this. What? Why are you picking just black people to play someone with so many character flaws? Or you go, why?
Like they did with Darth Vader.
Yes, that's right.
He was played by the Green Cross Code Man. Okay. Just the voice was done by...
That's true. Yeah. Yes, it was the Green Cross Code Man. I wonder what they were saying there.
Have you ever seen the videos of the original audio of Star Wars?
No.
So you've got... I can't remember his name, but you've got the Green Cross Code Man going like, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Yeah. No, Luke, I am your father.
They should have left it as it was.
This is the difference to me. We're talking about Star Wars. You're like, oh, have you read Bronte, Wuthering, whatever?
She only wrote one novel, Josh. You could... do with the courtesy of reading it.
I'll read it straight after I finish your one.
And it's actually brilliant.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back. 10:22. Ben and Nana with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News, and we're delighted to be joined also by Esther Kraku and former Labour advisor James Schneider in the studio. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Good morning.
Right, let's start with our first story, the Chagos Islands. I'm going to start with you, James, on this, because you used to live on a nice... where did you used to live?
St Vincent in the Eastern Caribbean.
I know they're nowhere near each other, but...
No, but they actually share a history because about 200 and a bit years ago, when Britain put down the resistance to its colonisation in St Vincent, it gathered up the remaining indigenous people that it hadn't killed, and it forcibly displaced them first to an uninhabited island with no fresh water, where most of the people died, and it then forcibly displaced them another time to another island half the Caribbean away, Roatan, off the coast of Honduras. And the Chagos Islanders suffered a similar fate in the late 60s and early 70s, where they were displaced en masse from where they lived, from their homeland, in order to make way for a US military base. Now, what has happened, or what is happening now, is the right of return for the people who were expelled from their homeland through no fault of their own whatsoever, in what is, under international law, a crime against humanity, following an international ruling by the world's highest court that the decolonisation process was incomplete. Clearly it's incomplete because they were not allowed to return. This land was kept. And it's been used as a military outpost by the US.
So your view then, it's rights for the...
It doesn't go far enough. Of course it is right that people who were expelled from their homeland can return. Of course it is right that sovereignty is returned to Mauritius. However, the US military base, which is the reason why these people were expelled from their homeland in the first place, will continue to be there. It is reported that the agreement between Britain and Mauritius extends the lease on that for 100 years with a potential top-up of 40 years. In reality, what would have been the fullest justice would be the dismantling of that military base, the paying of large amounts of compensation to the people to reconstruct their homeland on Chagos.
Or perhaps even asking the people whether they want it to be...
Well, I mean, yeah, this is the thing. The idea that the rightful thing to do is to hand them back to to Mauritius is, one, deeply flawed, because you have to ask the people that live there, first of all, and many people who actually live on that island would prefer to have access to Britain and to be governed by Britain. Yes, terrible things happen in the past, but this idea of constantly self-flagellating to make up for a history that really
it's not
can't control.
Sorry,
hold on, let me finish. Can't control.
Uninterrupted.
Against our own national interests and against actually the interests of the people that live there. For me, I don't see really the sense there. Mauritius is basically an ally of Beijing, and this giving up a strategic post in the Indian Ocean to a country that is having elections next month, oddly enough, and is going to use this as some sort of win. I don't really see the benefit of that. And if we're going to give up the Chagos Islands, what happens to the Falklands or Gibraltar, all the other overseas territories that are contested by other countries? This ICJ ruling that you refer to was non-binding. And this process was started by the Conservatives, we must acknowledge that. But when David Cameron was Foreign Secretary for the short time that he was, he completely put a stop to it. The idea that when we tried to speak to the Foreign Commonwealth Office, they kept going back and saying, oh, it's too soon to speculate. And then a week later, they come out with the decision, shows that they were willing to do this from day one. I don't know which student activists are actually running our government, but these kinds of decisions really undermines the government. Because if you're going to make the case that it should be rightfully given back to the Mauritians, then how can you then make the case that what happens to the people that actually live there? So you're saying you're right, this is who you rightfully belong to, but you get no autonomy. But again, this is supposed to right a wrong
and also, James,
that they supposedly are grieved over. That doesn't make sense.
The Chagosians, unfortunately, don't live there because they were expelled, and they do want to go home. They want to be able to...
Have you asked them?
I've met many people from the Chagos Islands.
Do you know how many people live there at the moment?
About 4,312, according to the last the last figures that I saw.
But here's the thing. But this is the thing. It's quite naive of you to assume that they want to be handed back to the Mauritians and, by extension, the Chinese instead of the British that have a much stronger human rights record, and they would much prefer having access to Britain. Here's the thing. You have to be extremely naive to think that people in other parts of the world would much prefer to be basically an associate of Beijing and their own human rights record than Britain.
The Chagosians have been campaigning for decades for the right of return in order to go home.
To return to who? Mauritius?
Well, listen, no, to return... so that they can return to the Chagos Islands. They can return to the land from which they were taken.
I want to get another debate in, but I would say that with all of this, the bottom line is that perhaps a referendum asking the people on the island whether they want it to go, which way they want it, would probably be the answer for that one. And what about private schools now? Esther Krakow, I want to come to you on this one. The VAT raid that the Labour Party thought would keep people in these schools, it turns out that lots of pupils are leaving.
Well, I mean, this was expected, and the government did say that they were expecting the state's education sector to absorb students coming in from the public education sector. The question is, at what point does it actually be detrimental to kids educated in the state sector? If you have between 5 and 10% of privately educated kids moving into state education, actually, it's going to cost the government more to accommodate these students coming into the state section, not even scratching the surface over the fact that 4,000 teachers are leaving the profession every year. So we'll have a backlog of teachers that we need to replace, and then you're also putting more pressure on the state education by having these students flood in. The idea that to do this, because the government has come up with its own figures that it's hoping maximum to get 1.5 or 1.6 billion pounds in revenue from this scheme. Well, all you have to do is have enough students move from private education to state education to completely negate that and actually put extra costs on the taxpayer. I don't really understand the logic of that.
I think
who is it supposed to benefit?
We are absolutely nowhere near those levels whatsoever. The figures that have been put out by the independent schools, i.e. their own lobby group who are lobbying against this policy, so we should treat it with a degree of scepticism. Their own figure is 13, in the papers today, is 13,000 students might move from the private sector to the state sector. Do you know what percentage that is?
That's a guesstimate, though. But that's a guesstimate.
You mentioned 5 or 10%. That is 1.5%.
OK, but that's a guesstimate.
That's one. Hold on.
Let him finish.
Yeah, that is 1.5% of those who go to private school. There are something like 10.7 million students at school in this country. The policy to remove the private school subsidy, to have VAT on this good, will pay for more teachers.
James, it will disproportionately affect those with special educational needs.
James, that is nonsense. Let me tell you why. I'm not going to name the local authority. I know for a fact one local authority near me is now having to pay for homeschooling for ex-private school kids because there is no space in state schools. State schools have class sizes now up to 30, 40, even 50 kids. There is no room. Like with everything else in Britain,
do you know how you reduce class sizes?
Go on, tell us.
You have more teachers.
Well, it depends if you've got enough classrooms.
Well, yes, that's another point.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? It's all very well saying that, but if you do it at the back end, so you started backwards rather than going forwards, you should start at the top. Make sure you've got enough rooms. Make sure you've got enough teachers. Then you could put in a policy like this. But if
there really are 13,000, if there are really 13,000, that is a vanishingly tiny percentage.
Unless you're
of the 10.7 million students. So this whole idea that the state sector is going to be overwhelmed. The only thing that is... No, it's just nonsense.
It really
is. It's mathematically nonsense.
No.
The only thing that's going to happen is this small policy is going to create a small number more teachers, and that is woefully not enough to deal with the education. It's not a gamble.
It is a gamble. It is a gamble.
Every decision...
Hold on, it's a gamble because... here's the thing. It's about the amount of revenue that the government is expecting from this policy, which is 1.6 billion maximum.
They're not going to get that.
They're not going to get... They're not even if they get half of that, that's not going to be enough to offset how much they're going to have to pay to educate these kids in the state sector. And that's the question. There's no other socialist government in Europe that even taxes education. So how can this government, a socialist government...
It's not a socialist government. This is not a socialist government.
James Schneider, thank you very much. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. But first, it's time for your news headlines with Sam Francis.
10:32, the top story from the newsroom this morning. Massive blasts have rocked Beirut overnight as Israel launched its most intense airstrikes so far on the Lebanese capital. This was the moment giant explosions were seen near the airport. Well, in the past 24 hours, almost 50 people have now died across Lebanon as Israeli forces escalate their ground operations in the south, clashing with Hezbollah fighters. We've also heard this morning that the UK is sending £10 million more in life-saving aid to Lebanon and is urging Britons to leave immediately as that conflict escalates. Meanwhile, Israel is preparing for what it calls a significant response to Iran's recent missile attacks as tensions rise across the region. And in Gaza, airstrikes have now pushed the death toll there to over 41,000 people since the conflict began. And here, another flight carrying Britons fleeing from that conflict in Lebanon has landed in Birmingham today. It's the second UK chartered plane to arrive, with more flights planned as Israel's attacks on Hezbollah and Iranian-backed forces continue. The government's also deployed troops to Cyprus for a potential military-led evacuation if Beirut's airport does close. It comes as G7 leaders are urging restraint, condemning Iran for destabilising the region. The government here is being warned its deal to return the Chagos Islands to Mauritius could put more overseas territories at risk. It comes as Argentina is now pledging to gain full sovereignty over the Falkland Islands. However, Britain insists its commitment to the Falklands is unwavering. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson told us he thinks that Chagos deal is crazy.
Chagos Islands being given back to Mauritius. Your reaction?
Crazy. I mean, I urge viewers of GB News to get out your maps, get out your atlases, check out the Chagos Islands, see where they are, see where Mauritius is. A long way away.
Yes.
What is this claim? It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Why are we doing this? Sheer political correctness.
Sir Keir Starmer says the government's new £22 billion funding package for projects that capture and store carbon emissions is a game changer. Labour says 2 projects in Merseyside and Teesside, known as carbon capture clusters, will create thousands of jobs, bring in investment and help meet climate goals. But Green campaigners are warning the move could prolong oil and gas production, with those 2 projects not set to begin storing carbon until at least 2028. The Health Secretary is calling on GPs to help make the NHS fit for the future, urging an end to their collective protest action, something he says is only punishing patients. Wes Streeting's been speaking this morning at the Royal College of GPs conference in Liverpool, where he highlighted the government's commitment to hire 1,000 new GPs and pushed for collaboration to rebuild the health service. And it comes as new figures from August have revealed that 1 in 20 GP appointments were either online or via video, sparking debate over whether it increases access or compromises patient care. And finally, young voices must be heard. That's the message from Prince Harry during a trip he took to South Africa, representing his youth HIV charity. On that solo visit to Johannesburg, the Duke of Sussex called on global leaders to close the digital divide and to provide safer internet access for the global south. His visit there followed a stop in Lesotho, where he reunited with his charity's co-founder, Prince Siso, and met with the nation's leaders. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Right, well, up next, the actress Sherry Houston will join us on the show to discuss how she'll be celebrating National Grandparents' Day on Sunday. Apparently, her grandchildren call her Nana. That's perfectly normal. This town is only big enough for one of us. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start today for most of us. Sunny spells continuing into the afternoon, but it will turn increasingly cloudy and damp as the day progresses in the far northwest. In fact, already some light outbreaks of rain are pushing into the Western Isles. They'll reach parts of the far north of Scotland at times as well. Northern Ireland likewise seeing a thicker cloud and some light rain at times with a freshening breeze. But for eastern and southern Scotland, England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells, highs of 16 to 17 Celsius. So feeling pleasant enough, but perhaps with a bit more cloud cover compared with Thursday. We see those clouds persisting into the evening for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some persistent damp weather for western Scotland, but eastern areas, well, some late sunshine just before it goes down. Northern and central England, plenty of sunshine. Northern Ireland, though, a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of mostly light rain. Now, for the southern half of the UK, well, we'll see the cloud melting away into the evening, and under clear skies overnight, temperatures will fall away. Another chilly night's expected through the Midlands, eastern and southern and southeast England, but elsewhere, with thickening cloud and a strengthening breeze, and some outbreaks of rain pushing into Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's a milder night with temperatures staying in the double figures. So it's really only the east of England and some central parts where we'll see single figures first thing Saturday and perhaps mid-single figures in some spots. Then we'll see a lot of fine weather once again across England and Wales, but with a bit more of a breeze and some cloud coming and going through the day. There's still scope for some sunshine at times, and mostly The more unsettled weather stays at bay until after dark, but it will reach Cornwall and it will affect parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, feeling cooler here as a result.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M80 in North Lanarkshire, the inside lanes closed northbound after an accident between junctions 4 and 5 from the M73 to Cumbernauld, causing queues. In County Down, the A20 is closed in both directions northwest of Grey Abbey after an accident. The A1M in County Durham's blocked northbound after a vehicle caught fire between junctions 62 and 63 from Carville to Chester Street, causing queues. The A1M in South Yorkshire, there's a lane closed northbound for emergency repairs between junctions 36 and 37 near Doncaster, causing delays. In Buckinghamshire, the A404 is closed southbound off the M40 at High Wycombe after an accident. The M4 from Berkshire into Wiltshire is closed westbound from junction 14 at Hungerford to 15 east of Swindon after an accident. On the M4 near Bristol, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 19 and 20 from the M32 to the M5, causing delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello, welcome back. 10:39. Ben and Nana with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Now, this Sunday marks National Grandparents' Day, a day for grandparents to be recognised for what they do and how they're the backbone of many families across Britain.
Yes, hear, hear. Our next guest is actress Sherry Hewson, who starred in Coronation Street, of course, Emmerdale and Hollyoaks, and amongst other TV appearances, will be celebrating National Grandparents' Day as a nana herself, and she joins us now. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
First
Good
of all,
morning. Yes, I am a nana.
So am I.
Oh, there you go. I've got a 5-year-old, a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old, so it's a busy life.
Sherry, first of all, how is it being a grandparent compared to, say, a parent? What's it like when you get your first grandchild? Is it kind of like a new lease of parenthood, I suspect?
Well, the thing is, what you realise is that when you're a parent, you have no time. There is no time. You know, you're working. It's like my dad always said, you know, he was always very sorry that he didn't look after my brother and myself that well because he was never there. But when I had my daughter, he was devoted to my daughter to the day he died. And I think it's a different kind of love. It's a sort of all-encompassing because you look at them and think, that's what I should have been. That's who I could have been if you hadn't got time to be at home. Now, a lot of grandparents live away from their grandchildren. I'm lucky I live 5 minutes away, and so they don't see them. They only see them so many times a year. And I feel sad about that because I see my grandchildren every day. There isn't a day that I'm not with them trampolining or skateboarding or whatever we do together.
Skateboarding.
So I'm lucky. I do everything with them, whatever they want me to do. Believe me, I do it all, and I love it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But this Grandparents' Day, which is the first week of October every year. There is a Grandparents' Day, but it's not recognised, you know, and I think it should be recognised. And this Ambassador Cruise Line, they are trying to push it forward so that people take it on board and realise that your grandchildren can give back to, you know, the grandparents for the love. I mean, you know what it's like when you've got a grandparent, how much you need them and how much you love them and what they mean to you. And if you nominate your grandparent or a grandchild you know, you can go to the Ambassador Cruise Line website and you can nominate them and they will win a 7-day cruise for 2 people. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, I've always wanted to go on a cruise, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you should. And it's fantastic and it gives back to the grandparent, doesn't it? You know? It's fabulous.
Because you can sit about, other people do stuff for you, everything's in close proximity and you can just chill out. You can just chill out. That's my sort of holiday. You ever been on a cruise?
Best type of holiday.
I've been on loads of cruises.
Have you?
Yeah.
Have you?
Lots. And I'm only mid-30s, so I'm not your typical cruiser, but my wife and I, well, even before we got married, we loved cruises. We took the kids on their first cruise last year, and it wasn't quite the same having kids.
Oh!
It was okay. It was just hard work. It's kind of a holiday. Any parent will know when you go on holiday with the kids, it's kind of looking after them in a slightly different location.
Yeah. But sometimes you've got your work
but it's
cut out.
great for children, though. Cruising is great for children.
No,
I mean, that's it. They're on that ship.
Yeah,
Nowhere to go.
I'll be scared. I might have to put little ropes on them so they can't get off the ship, or at least I'll know if they go, I'll go. So then we're all together. No, but Sherry, I was going to ask, what's the best bit? A lot of people say the best bit about being a grandparent is that you can be like my mum. She gives like my son and daughter all these sweets and little things that she would never have given me. And I have
know.
Is the best bit actually being able to give them back at the end in a way that you can spoil them?
Well, the thing is, my grandchildren say that they love me very much because I never say no. Which is kind of but I don't care. I never do say no. I'll say yes to everything. So if they want, I mean, they do. Daughter's always saying, just don't give them too many sweets because they're bouncing off the walls. I'll go, oh, well, night then, see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Bounce off her walls.
And Sherry, as well, today, in this day and age, it used to be one parent rather, would go out and work, the other would stay home with the kids, and one income would be enough. But now we rely on grandparents so much for childcare and so on, and doing errands, so... very much valued.
That's what grandparents are for. I mean, I do all the running around, the school runs, the after-school stuff, with all the acro, as my granddaughter is an acrobat, and all of that. And I do all of that. So, but I love it.
Good for you.
And winning a cruise would give it all back. I'll be nominated.
You can nominate me, even though I'm just Nana by name, but not by actual nature. Sherry Houston, thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. That is Sherry Houston.
Thanks, Sherry.
It's National Grandparents' Day, or week. On Sunday, starts on Sunday.
Sherry of Benidorm fame, of course, as well, one reader said. Her best part, apparently, according to some of you guys watching at home. Anyway, up next, Israel targets Hezbollah's next leader in a huge blast in Beirut overnight. As more planes are expected to evacuate Brits from the Middle East. We'll have the latest in just a tick. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Michael Sheen talks about how he was wearing false teeth and wigs and whatever else to play this part. How's it gone down over that side of the pond?
I mean, I have to tell you, I absolutely loved it. I'm seeing everybody else there. They think it's a hoot, but Ben and Anne, it is very funny. And you walk away from it thinking that was great television. But is that appropriate when you think about the fact that it's associated with Jeffrey Epstein? After it was over, I thought, I'm going to say good things about this. But the further I get away from it, the more I think, but what about these women that were violated by Jeffrey Epstein when they turned on the television? Were they laughing? Did they see the humor in it? Or are they horrified that it's become a joke?
The dialogue seemed very stilted and expositional, I thought. But then you think, well, that's clearly what they were trying to achieve. And it wasn't a documentary, it was a drama. And some bits were clearly made up.
Absolutely. I mean, when you watch the princesses crying, when you watch the princesses making decisions behind the scenes, it's very compelling television. And you have to remind yourself, similar to The Crown, that you are watching something based on a true story, but has been greatly exaggerated for entertainment value. And I initially thought, oh, this is horrible for Prince Andrew. And it is. But at the same time, I think that sometimes these pieces make the royal family a little bit more relevant. They introduce new people, and people are now watching them a little more closely. And I think it's a double-edged sword. It can be both things. It can be bad. It can be good for the royal family.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 48 minutes after 10 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and me, Nana Akweer.
All right, overnight, Middle Eastern tensions have intensified as massive blasts were reported in Lebanon's southern Beirut.
One Israeli airstrike hit close to the city's international airport, close to a Hezbollah stronghold. We're joined now by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Mark, so talk to us about what's happening there.
Well, of course, there's the immediate war that we're seeing now raging between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, but it's being felt wider afield, and it has been for some significant time. We've got some incredible footage, actually, showing a British oil tanker that was struck earlier in the week by a Houthi unmanned surface drone. Now, look at that explosion. We're told that the crew were not seriously injured, and the tanker, incredibly, has been able to make its way onwards to its next port. But that is an unmanned surface drone of the type that we've seen, of course, Ukraine use against Russian ships in that conflict. And the Houthis have been using that as well as aerial drones and missiles to target shipping. 2 ships were struck earlier in the week. And there's some real concern about this. And this directly affects people in the UK and other Western nations, because these ships, instead of going up through the Suez Canal, the shortest route into Europe, are having to reroute all the way around Africa, adding thousands of miles to the journey and many thousands of pounds to the cost. So there's some other footage that we'll hopefully bring you a little later that actually shows the crew on board this oil tanker, private security crew with guns shooting at this surface drone as it comes towards them, because a lot of these merchant ships now, they go through sort of pirate-infested waters around Somalia and alike, and they have their own private security crews, a lot of these vessels. And we have that now. We can actually show you these images, which are, again, just like the other images we showed you of the explosion. This is from the point of view of the crew as they are, as this drone is coming towards them on the water. Hopefully we can see that imagery now. Second now, the explosion. Huge explosion, which of course we saw from the other shot, but absolutely terrifying for those crews on board who, yes, some of these vessels have got, you know, the ability to fire at threats, but against a sort of an unmanned surface threat like this, it's very difficult.
When you say surface, was it skimming on the surface of the sea?
It was, yeah. You could see it coming towards the oil tanker.
It's worth remembering, isn't it, that you talk about unmanned drones and the armoury of the Houthis. They're not just some ragtag militia with AKs running along the coast. These are properly funded, Iranian-funded groups. Look at that. And also oil surging after this attack, and of course Joe Biden's comments about Israel's possible retaliation on Iran, up 5%, and that's going to bump up petrol prices, energy bills.
Yeah, the more that this conflict escalates and widens, then, of course, the impact on the oil price is likely to increase. But it's also everyday consumer goods of having to divert these ships at huge extra cost all the way around Africa to get to Europe, that is then being felt in not just the direct sort of shipping costs, but also, you know, when you're talking about oil, it's not, again, just fuel, it's petroleum products that are all reliant on that.
Is it in their interests to perpetuate this, so the Houthis and Iran, because then it bumps up the price of oil and makes the resource that they have more scarce and more valuable? Is it in their interests to carry on with this?
Well, there's an upside, there are downsides, of course, in terms of being targeted directly for what they're doing as well. But, you know, from Iran's point of view. It's all geopolitics in that region. It's about exerting its influence and authority in that region. That's why it's got these proxies or aligned groups, aligned terrorist groups like the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah, as we know, in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, other aligned groups in Syria and Iraq. They have lots of influence in that area. And we heard today from Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who is the supreme leader of Iran, calling on other Muslim groups to rally against Israel.
All right, Mark White, thank you very much.
Such an important route, that Suez Canal. It's such a tight... I've done a cruise down it before, talking of cruises again. But yeah, it's such an important route. Otherwise, as Mark said, you have to go all the way around Africa. We sailed past Somalia. We had ex-SAS private security on board. All the lights off because of Somali pirates at night.
Wow.
Quite an experience.
Well, listen, still to come, we will hear the Prime Minister explaining, that's Keir Starmer, why he's spending $22 billion on carbon capture clusters. You won't want to miss that. Good luck with that, Keir. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Stay tuned. Let's get an update now with your weather with Aidan.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start today for most of us. Sunny spells continuing into the afternoon, but it will turn increasingly cloudy and damp as the day progresses in the far northwest. In fact, already some light outbreaks of rain are pushing into the Western Isles. They'll reach parts of the far north of Scotland at times as well. Northern Ireland likewise seeing a thicker cloud and some light rain at times with a freshening breeze. But for eastern and southern Scotland, England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells, highs of 16 to 17 Celsius. So feeling pleasant enough, but perhaps with a bit more cloud cover compared with Thursday. We see those clouds persisting into the evening for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some persistent damp weather for western Scotland, but eastern areas, well, some late sunshine just before it goes down. Northern and central England, plenty of sunshine. Northern Ireland, though, a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of mostly light rain. Now, for the southern half of the UK, well, we'll see the cloud melting away into the evening, and under clear skies overnight, temperatures will fall away. Another chilly night's expected through the Midlands, eastern and southern and southeast England, but elsewhere, with thickening cloud and a strengthening breeze, and some outbreaks of rain pushing into Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's a milder night with temperatures staying in the double figures. So it's really only the east of England and some central parts where we'll see single figures first thing Saturday and perhaps mid-single figures in some spots. Then we'll see a lot of fine weather once again across England and Wales, but with a bit more of a breeze and some cloud coming and going through the day. There's still scope for some sunshine at times, and mostly the more unsettled weather stays at bay until after dark, but it will reach Cornwall and it will affect parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, feeling cooler here as a result.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still plenty.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday when I interview one of the most significant political figures of our era, Boris Johnson. Nothing will be off limits as we discuss his autobiography, Unleashed, and everything in it.
I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry, Tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 11 o'clock on Friday, October the 4th, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akweer.
Now, any moment now, Sir Keir Starmer will set out his plan to spend £22 billion to fund carbon capture projects in Merseyside and Teesside. Ed Miliband is taking centre stage right now.
Elsewhere, leave or remain. Boris Johnson wants another referendum, this time on the ECHR. How would you vote?
The COVID kids' children are arriving at reception unavailable or unable to talk wearing nappies, and some of them using buggies. That's a shocking warning from a former children's SAR.
And Britain gets smaller. Argentina's promised to gain full sovereignty of the Falkland Islands after Britain surrendered control of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Boris Johnson gave this reaction to GB News.
It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Why are we doing this? Sheer political correctness, desire to look like the good guys, a desire to look as though we're unbundling the last relics of our empire.
In every 20 doctor's appointments in England are carried out online. When did you last see your GP face-to-face?
Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us again for this second hour. Big show coming up. We're going to be going live to Sir Keir Starmer announcing that carbon capture project. But first, your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 11 o'clock. The top story today from the newsroom. The UK is set to send another £10 million in life-saving aid to Lebanon and urging Britons to leave now. That's as the conflict there escalates. It follows a night of massive blasts in Beirut, and this was the moment giant explosions were seen near the Beirut airport. Well, as you can see there, those massive explosions leading to, in the past 24 hours, at least 45 people dead across Lebanon as Israel launched its most intense airstrikes on the capital. Israeli forces are also escalating ground operations in the south of the country, targeting Hezbollah militants, while tensions rise with Iran following missile attacks on Israel. In Gaza, airstrikes there have pushed the death toll to now over 41,000 since the conflict began. Here, another flight carrying Britons fleeing that conflict in Lebanon has landed in Birmingham today. It's the second UK-chartered plane to arrive. More than 150 UK nationals have now already left Beirut, and troops are on standby in Cyprus for a potential military-led evacuation if the Beirut airport closes. It comes as G7 leaders are urging restraint, condemning Iran for destabilising the region. The government's being warned its deal to return the Chagos Islands to Mauritius puts more overseas territories at risk. It comes as Argentina is now pledging to gain full sovereignty over the Falkland Islands. However, Britain insists its commitment to the Falklands is unwavering. And former Prime Minister Boris Johnson told us he thinks the Chagos deal is crazy.
Yeah. Chagos Islands being given back to Mauritius. Your reaction?
Crazy. I mean, I urge viewers of GB News to get out your maps, get out your atlases, check out the Chagos Islands, see where they are, and see where Mauritius is. A long way away.
Yes.
What is this claim? It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Why are we doing this? Sheer political correctness.
Sir Keir Starmer is set to announce a game-changing, his words, £22 billion funding package for projects that capture and store carbon emissions. In the last few minutes, we've heard from the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, and you can see there the Chancellor Rachel Reeves currently giving her speech before Sir Keir Starmer steps up to the lectern. The Prime Minister's due to speak there at that manufacturing site in northwest England. We will, of course, head straight back there as soon as Sir Keir Starmer appears. Labour says 2 projects in Merseyside and Teesside, known as carbon capture clusters, will create thousands of jobs, bring investment and help meet climate goals. However, Green campaigners are warning the move could prolong oil and gas production, with the projects not set to begin storing carbon until 2028. And we can now head straight back, in fact, to Sir Keir Starmer as he
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you to all of you for coming and being here. I think you may have thought you were going to see Kylie, but you got Keir instead, I'm afraid. But I do want to say a big thank you to you, because we've come here to get a proper sense of the work that you do. We've come here to hear about how successful you are. This is an incredible place to work. The amount of work that you do from here is phenomenal. This company has grown and grown, and that's down to you and the skills that you bring to what you do day in, day out. And for me, there's no substitute for coming to places where you and others work and getting a sense for myself of what you do, how skilled it is, and how important it is to our country. I've said many times, my dad was a tool maker, he worked in a factory, but that matters to me because until I went off to college, I didn't even know any working environment other than a factory. So it is really, really important for me to be here today and to say thank you for being here, thank you for listening to us, but thank you hugely for what you do, because it's really, really important. Thank you for hosting us here today. Really good to see representatives from BP here, Equinor and ENI, who have all worked so hard on this moment of partnership, and that's what it is, because this investment in our future we make together, and that is back to you. In other words, this investment, yes, it's a technical question of facing the future. Yes, it's about how we ensure that we get what we need as we go forward, the investment into our country. But above all else, it's about making sure that there were thousands of people like you with skilled, good, secure jobs that give you the security and the dignity and the pride in the work that you do. So yes, there's a lot of technicality in all of this. Yes, there's some numbers flying around, hugely important. But in the end, what matters to me and to us as a government is what a difference it makes to your lives and the lives of other people who are doing jobs like you, not just now and next year, but into the future, and making sure that we have you and them in our mind's eye when we make our decisions, because politics is about who are you thinking about when you're making your decisions. And that's why this is such a hugely exciting moment in the future of British industry, because as Ed has already pointed out, it is a landmark week in our national story, because this week we saw the end of coal. The end of coal, the power that built this country for many years. And now, as we see the end of coal, we see the new future on our horizon with carbon capture and storage. The largest programme in this new and vital industry anywhere in the world. That is incredible. Right here in Liverpool Bay and on the East Coast in Teesside. 4,000 skilled jobs for working people, jobs similar to the jobs you're doing, skills. And because we're stabilising our economy, and because we do this in partnership with the private sector, and because we're fixing the foundations and providing a long-term industrial strategy, a new direction, certainty and stability, and the promise of so much more, because tied up in this in the future is 50,000 jobs across the country in the wider supply chain. That's what's at stake with this investment today. Billions of long-term private investment unlocked, investment in hydrogen, the first industrial scale plant in the country And for our energy-intensive industries, like glass making here, or cement, or steel, or ceramics, you're familiar with these, the security that the future belongs to them, that the necessary mission of decarbonisation does not mean deindustrialisation. Now look, this, if you like, is the politics of national renewal in action. We've been talking about national renewal. What does that look like? How do we face the future? And before I was a politician, I was a lawyer, as you may know, and one of the first cases I did was a challenge to the then Tory government's programme to close the coal mines. And that meant that I worked with families and communities who were going to lose their jobs in a really important industry for them. And I therefore know firsthand what this country lost when we ended coal in that way, because we lost jobs, we lost communities, we lost a way of life, I think we lost dignity, and we also, I think, lost identity, because we are the first industrial nation. That's who we are as a country. It's our story, a source of pride that this country, our country, communities like here in Runcorn, changed the world, and that what is made here matters. You can take that away from people without a plan to replace it, and it's like losing a part of yourself, a missing limb, an open wound, a heart ripped out of the nation. So yes, I know what we lost when we lost coal all those years ago, but I also know how we can rewrite our story in the ink of the future. That same identity, that pride, unlocked for new times. Now, you don't do that with a shrug of the shoulder or by telling an onrushing tide to stop. We saw plenty of that in Birmingham this week. And nor do you do it with false hope, sentiment, by treating industrial communities as some sort of charity case, rather than a source of growth and dynamism to be unlocked. No, what you need is a serious, unsentimental plan, a hard-headed assessment of where this country can win. What is our comparative advantage? And then the determination to roll up your sleeves and invest in the future. And that's what today is all about, with our partners in business. Because as both Ed said and Rachel said, carbon capture is a race that we can win. We have the financial know-how in London and Edinburgh, world leaders in green finance. We have the geology. The UK continental shelf holds a third of the exploitable carbon storage space in all of Europe. Just think about that. Our geology, a third of everything that we have in Europe. Huge potential for our country, for the jobs of the future. And we have the heritage in this room, the skills and expertise that have moved and exploited gas at sea for decades. So I'm absolutely confident, mark my words, we can do this, and the timing is right. This is a technology that is now arrived, that is ready with this investment to scale. But it is just the start. I've always believed that clean energy is a golden opportunity for our country, a chance to bring security and hope to working people, relight the fires of renewal in those areas that got hit so hard by deindustrialisation. But I'm not alone in that, and this is important because politicians around the world are saying the same thing in northern France, in eastern Germany, in the Rust Belt of America. Their aspirations are the same as ours. This is a race, a global race to get ahead, and I'm really pleased that we're putting ourselves in a position not just to be in that global race, but to win that global race, and that'll be measured in thousands of jobs for literally decades to come. One of the problems we've got is we've been too slow so far. The previous government stopped and started and started and stopped, and not just on clean energy, across the piece, life sciences.
OK, that was Sir Keir Starmer there.
They never
we've got him back.
put
Here we go.
industrial strategy on a stable long-term footing. And as you all know, there's nothing worse for investors than chaos and uncertainty. So Today is not just a moment of industrial renewal, it's also a line in the sand. We're going to do things differently. In just under 2 weeks' time, the world's most important companies will arrive here in Britain for our first International Investment Summit. All these companies, global companies, coming here to Britain, and I hope to see some of you there, to have a summit on investment into Britain, into our future, into jobs like yours. But more importantly, I hope we can deepen our partnership, because investment is how we will change the country. We have to be smart. We have to be pragmatic. We have to invest only where we've got a clear and undeniable potential, and make sure, like today, that there's a clear case for long-term growth. But above all, we have to invest together, because you can't bury your head and hide from the future. That's how you go backwards. But what you can do is use the power of government, the strength and skills of a nation, to reshape that future in your interests. And that's what we're doing today with carbon capture and storage. That is the country's heritage. The politics of serious, stable government. The business of change in action. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for what you do. And I want to have the opportunity, if I can, before we leave, to just have a chat with you about the work that you do and understand for myself how you do what you do. But I really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate you listening. Thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to take some questions from the media first. I've got Justin from the BBC first, I think. Justin.
Prime Minister, you talk about igniting a new industrial revolution here in the north of England, but this money and this project isn't new, is it? The Tories announced 20 billion for a scheme that was almost exactly the same as this just a year ago.
Well, the Tories spoke about doing this, but they didn't actually do any of the agreements, and they didn't put the money aside. So that is the big change. And this is the big political divide now between invest or decline. We've had the decline bit for 14 years. We were elected in for change, and the change is investment. So if you look at only the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've had £8 billion of investment in Amazon that Rachel announced just 2 or 3 weeks ago. We've had £10 billion from Blackstone, which I announced last week from the US, and then this big investment today, which will unlock 50,000 jobs. So it's the difference between the decline that we've had and the investment that we need. That is the new political divide. It's how we take our country forward, and that is why this is so important. You don't get investment just by talking about investment. You get investment by partnering with business, by stabilising the economy, by showing you've got a long-term strategy and having the ambition to take the plan forward, put the money down and invest in the future. And that's why I'm so pleased that we're making this announcement today. It isn't in isolation. Those three I've just listed, and I'm confident that in coming days and weeks, we'll have more investment decisions like this. And it should be seen as a piece. In other words, these are not one-offs, they're all part of the strategy of this government to invest. Thank you so much. Tamara, Sky.
Tamara Cohen, Sky News. Prime Minister, you're announcing a big investment today, £22 billion. But for many weeks, you've been telling us that there is a £22 billion black hole requiring very painful decisions, some of which we haven't even heard about yet. Do you accept that that gloomy message risked putting off investors? And if I may, the stories about freebies are not going away. Is it time for you to look again at how we fund politics?
Look, on the question of investors, it is absolutely clear that by taking the approach we've taken, which is to stabilise the economy, that is attractive to investors. Anybody who's spoken to an investor in the last 5
That's
the same answer as I've had repeatedly until the election, which is it's the instability, it's the chaos, it's the ever-changing minister behind the desk, there's no long-term strategy, we're not putting our money in. So, yes, we've got to take difficult decisions in the budget in relation to the missing money from the last government, really tough decisions, like, for example, the winter fuel payment. That is to stabilise the economy, because I'm absolutely convinced that only by stabilising the economy can we attract the investment that we need. In relation to your challenge, as it were, that aren't we putting off investment, quite the opposite. There's Amazon putting down 8 billion. There's Blackstone putting down 10 billion. There's the 22 billion going in today, which will unlock billions of private investment as well. And I am confident that in the coming weeks and months, I'll be announcing, or Rachel or Ed will be announcing to you, other investments that are coming in. So the proof is in the pudding here, it's coming in. In relation to donations, I'm not sure there's anything I can add to the very many answers I've given in the last week or two. Thank you, Tamara. Catherine from GB News.
Catherine Forster, GB News. Prime Minister, Labour pledged to bring people's energy bills down by £300, but you've taken the winter fuel payment off lots of pensioners. Energy price cap's gone up. The green transition is going to be very expensive, isn't it? Aren't energy bills going to go up, in fact, at least in the short term? And also just on the Chagos Islands, Argentina now saying they want the Falklands back. Can you guarantee that under Labour no other overseas territories of Britain will be signed away? Thank you.
Look, on the question of bills, energy bills, that has been a major problem of the last few years. Talk to any individual who's had their energy bills at home, and I'm sure you feel they've gone up very high. Talk to any business, including the business here, and they will know their energy bill has gone up too high. And yes, that is partly caused by international issues, but it was worse in this country because we didn't stabilise the economy, we didn't invest in renewables years ago. Because with renewable energy, you get lower energy costs for good. Not just for one winter, not capping for a few months in necessary circumstances, but lower energy bills for good because renewables are cheaper than fossil fuels. That is really important. You get independence and security. By doing renewables here in Britain, you're not relying on the international market. And therefore, even if there are international conflicts that affect the price of energy, we would have our own supply, which is independent. And of course, what you get is the next generation of jobs. And that's why this investment is so important. There is always the challenge of the short term versus the long term. But if you never do the long term decisions, you will always have the short term problems. And that's where we've been stuck for 14 years. This is about making sure we're taking the long term decisions to keep those energy bills down for good for millions of people across the country. In relation to the Chagos Islands, look, the single most important thing was ensuring that we had a secure base, the joint US in particular, UK base. Hugely important to the US, hugely important to us. We've now secured that, and that is why you saw such warm words from the US yesterday. Thank you, Catherine. I've got Chloe from the Eye.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chloe Chaplin from the Eye newspaper. I wanted to
Here's Starmer talking today. He's live right now. I mean, he talked about stabilising our economy and doing it in partnership and the promise of so much more. And he said about 50,000 jobs. He quoted that billions would be unlocked. And he also talked about the security that the future belongs to us, politics of natural renewal in action. He said that what we needed was serious, unsentimental plan, hard-headed assessment where this country can win, investing in our future, and carbon capture was the way to go.
Okie dokie, still to come, a nice little local win for Reform. According to their members, they're celebrating online this morning. A council win, overturning a massive Labour majority. We'll fill you in on all the details in just a tick. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Richard, the King will probably fly there, I would imagine, with the Queen. You can guarantee they'll have to make a point about offsetting their carbon just to keep that lot happy. They won't use the walkabout term because they'll have to keep the Aboriginal community happy over there. Obviously, they'll be fine that the Queen's face has now been taken off banknotes over there, replaced, I believe, by a member of the Aboriginal community, naturally. You know, you've got all of these tick boxes that the King and the royal family have to do, instead of just maybe, I don't know, leading, being there, being present. Why do they keep bowing down to this stuff?
Well, firstly, as I say, I mean, if you look at the Commonwealth, there are 56 countries. Now, I think that's an enormously important institution, and we benefit in all sorts of ways, as do the other countries who are members of it. Now, if you don't take account, with times changing, by the way, of course, as they did during Queen Elizabeth's reign, if you don't take account of various sensitivities, especially certain pressure groups, I'm not suggesting that we write off our history as being something that's dreadful. There are ups and downs and pluses and minuses, we all know that. But the point is to be sensitive to other cultures, and that is absolutely critical.
What we're seeing in the UK, a lot of these same issues do crop up in Australia, especially with freedom of speech and saying the wrong thing, getting cancelled. I've met with so many people who have personally, like, they've been deplatformed, lost their jobs just for having an opinion, just for potentially saying the wrong thing, and then losing their livelihood as a result. So with Australia, I think particularly this is the trend that we saw from 2020 with the lockdowns, especially in Melbourne, some of the harshest lockdown restrictions in the world. Now, Australia is known as being a country of freedom and liberty. So then I think for many Australians, it was a huge turning point, a big wake-up call.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Just fast approaching 26 minutes after 11 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and me, Nana Acquia. Right, it's time for the papers, and joining us now we have James Schneider and Esther Kraken. Right, where should we go? Should we start with ministers to invest in 22 billion in carbon capture? We've heard Sir Keir Starmer speaking.
Yeah, so this is a bit. You had a very good guest on in the previous hour talking about this. This is a bit of a fossil fuel subsidy. We do need to have large-scale investment in the country, full stop, we know that. We also need to build a new energy system, we also know that. Some other news that we've got about the oil prices going up 5% on fears of wider war in West Asia. And we are, whether we like it or not, we're going to have to transition to a new energy system. And it was going to take some time, and it's going to take a lot of investment. And this basically doesn't start doing that. What we should be spending, and this is a lot of money, what we should be spending the money in is building that new energy system, which means renewable energy, so that we're less reliant on fossil fuels for a whole range of reasons, because of climate breakdown and also because of the security of supply.
I mean, this government, this government has actually, ironically, been quite consistent on this. And they said, you know, we will still need to rely on fossil fuels, which is the energy source for 80% of the energy source for most of the world, for some considerable time. So it's not like they've backtracked, or it's not like they're sort of, you know, lying to the public. However, I do agree that we do need to sort out our energy mix. I am personally a fan of the energy sources that are the most plentiful, the cheapest and the most reliable. And as things stand, it doesn't look like that's renewable energy. I actually favour nuclear energy more, or stuff like tidal. But, you know, that's a different conversation. But the reality is this is actually in line with what the government has said, which is ironic because they've not been very consistent on other things. But in this case, they have been. And I think we have to look at it as a sign of some sort of rational thinking. I'm not necessarily a fan of Ed Miliband. I think he's more of an ideologue than actually a competent politician. But I'm happy that Rachel Reeves has taken this step, because the reality is we are going to still have to rely on fossil fuels for some considerable amount of time. And there's no point in destroying the economy to sort of make some sort of statement when the rest of the world are still just going to do what works for them.
James, our reporter on the ground, Catherine Forster, said to Sir Keir Starmer in that briefing, you promised prior to the election that energy bills would immediately go down by £300. He then backtracked on that live just a minute ago. Why is he making so many promises he can't keep?
Well, one promise that you can't keep, you might think, OK, we'll give a bit of leeway. A second one, it's a problem. When you're Keir Starmer, and now we're in the dozens of promises, solemn pledges and commitments that are rapidly backtracked on, you get the position where you can't really trust what he says. The only things that you can trust, it seems, are things where corporate lobbyists have got their oar in some particular policy area, and that seems to have an oversized play in setting Labour policy. So, yes, he promised energy bills would come down, energy bills are going to go up.
I mean, in his defence, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I'm throwing up a little bit in my mouth for saying this. It's never advisable to promise on energy prices, because there's so much about energy prices that are out of our control and unfortunately out of Keir Starmer's control. And I think on this particular point, the only thing that he can say is give some assurances about some sort of long-term strategic thinking on our energy mix. That's not just going to be a 5-year one-party policy idea, but actually going to transcend multiple years and multiple governments should we change government.
I agree on the point of having strategic, but the government can control energy prices. We have an energy price cap. The regulator can decide
but there's an opportunity cost there.
Of course, no, there's a trade-off, right? Of course there's a trade-off. But if you are a politician, you want people to trust you, and you say, we think that bills should go down, and that means there will be some other costs to do that, and we think that's the right decision, then people can judge you on that, and you can make a reasonable, a balanced thing. If you say bills are going to go down, oh no, now they're going up, oh, we just won't talk about how we said they'll go down again, people think you're slippery.
Is he trustworthy, Sir Keir Starmer?
I don't think you could think from anything that I've said that I would trust him.
Right.
Great.
James Schneider, Esther Kraku, thank you very much. Time for your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It's just gone 30 minutes past 11, also known as 11:30. As we've been hearing, Sir Keir Starmer's announced a £22 billion funding package for so-called carbon capture clusters and storage projects. Speaking to workers in Liverpool in the last few minutes, the Prime Minister again highlighted his toolmaker father, stressing the importance of skilled jobs and thanked the plant's staff there. He called today's investment a moment of partnership, promising 4,000 new jobs and up to 50,000 jobs in the supply chain. The UK is sending another £10 million in life-saving aid to Lebanon and urging Britons to leave now as the conflict there escalates. It follows a night of massive blasts in Beirut, and this was the moment one giant explosion was seen near the city's airport. Well, in the past 24 hours, at least 45 people have died across Lebanon as Israel launched its most intense airstrikes on the Lebanese capital. Israeli forces are also escalating ground operations in the south, with Hezbollah militants as the target. It comes while tensions are rising with Iran following missile attacks on Israel. And in Gaza, airstrikes have pushed the death toll to over 41,000 since the conflict began. Here, another flight carrying Britons fleeing Lebanon's spiralling conflict has landed in Birmingham. It's the second UK chartered plane to arrive. More than 150 UK nationals have now already left Beirut. And troops are on standby in Cyprus for a potential military-led emergency evacuation. It comes as G7 leaders are urging restraint and condemning Iran for destabilising the region. The government is being warned its deal to return the Chagos Islands to Mauritius could put more overseas territories at risk. It comes as Argentina's now pledging to gain full sovereignty of the Falkland Islands. However, Britain insists its commitment to the Falklands is unwavering. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson told us he thinks the Chagos deal is crazy.
Chagos Islands being given back to Mauritius. Your reaction?
Crazy. I mean, I urge viewers of GB News to get out your maps, get out your atlases, check out the Chagos Islands, see where they are, see where Mauritius is. A long way away.
Yes.
What is this claim? It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Why are we doing this? Sheer political correctness.
And finally, it's been confirmed in the last hour or so that British tech tycoon Mike Lynch drowned when his super yacht sank off the coast of Sicily in August. An inquest in Ipswich opened this morning confirmed the 59-year-old's cause of death, but post-mortems for his daughter Hannah and other passengers on board that yacht remain inconclusive. Mike Lynch and his daughter were among 7 killed when the vessel was caught in a storm, including Morgan Stanley chairman Jonathan Bloomer and his wife Judy. The investigation is continuing with the next hearing scheduled for April next year. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at midday.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Up at noon is Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. Good morning to you both. What's in store for our lovely viewers today?
Well, it's a busy show. Of course, we're going to be touching on that big energy announcement from the government. What does that actually mean for us?
Yeah, Keir Starmer in The Sun today. I will not sacrifice British industry to drum-banging, finger-wagging net zero extremists. Do you believe him? I mean, how much British industry have we already lost on the altar of net zero? Port Talbot, you've got the North Sea oil and gas industry.
Yeah.
How many jobs have already been lost? Is 22 billion on carbon capture going to save the day?
And 22 billion, does that remind you of anything?
The black hole, they're all falling in it, aren't they?
There you go. But also, of course, we're going to be looking at the Chagos Islands. Interesting tidbit today. The phrase, the sun will never set on the British Empire. It is still technically true. For now, there is a bit of British territory, bit of British overseas territory all around the world, these little islands that mean that technically, for all of the day, there's never a moment of darkness on British territory. The moment at which the Chagos Islands are surrendered and that sovereignty is ceded, that phrase will no longer be true. There'll be a time of day where British territory is all in darkness for the first time since the 1700s.
Well, Catherine Forster there asking Keir Starmer, what about the Falklands, live at that press conference? What's happening with the Falklands? What about Gibraltar?
Yeah, and of course the Falklands the Argentine foreign minister has now been saying, well, this opens a door to the Falklands. And I think it doesn't really matter what the government thinks on this stuff.
We're just going to give up everything.
If all of the adversaries of the United Kingdom, anyone with a territorial claim on British territory, now feels emboldened thanks to this move.
And also, we're going to be touching on Iran's Ayatollah and his warmongering speech that he gave this morning. Bonkers speech, of course, calling Israel all names under the sun, rallying Muslim nations to essentially take things into their own hands.
Well, listen, this sounds like a cracking show. All that and more coming up at midday. How do you fancy another referendum, Boris Johnson? Things that you would like one about leaving the ECHR. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Right, up and down the country, many parents are preparing or have indeed already sent their child off to university.
Indeed, but sometimes it can leave parents struggling to cope with the, quote, empty nest syndrome their child leaves behind. So joining us now to discuss how to cope with sending off your sprogs to university, or not so sprogs, is broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy. Nice to see you this early. This is a real thing, isn't it? It's our colleague Paul Coitz, our sports expert, describes it as grief, sending your young adults off to uni and leaving the nest for the first time.
Yes, I think grief is the right word because it's an ending. And it's not just an ending with your relationship with your child. It changes from here on in. But it also is very much about your identity. Your identity as a parent is weakening. You'll always be that child's parent, but you're not going to have the same involvement on a daily basis. And so you're left to think, OK, well, what does my life look like going forward? What's my relationship? If you're in a relationship with a partner, how is that going to change? And like all elements of grief, there's going to be a bit of a process. There's going to be that transition period where you adjust to your new life, just as your sprogs, as you call them, are adjusting to their new, exciting phase of their life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11:39. Ben and Nana with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Now, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that Britain should hold a referendum on its membership of the European Convention of Human Rights, the ECHR.
Another one? Well, joining us now in the studio to discuss this is barrister Sam Fowles. Good morning, Sam. Do we want another referendum on the ECHR? And also, people who say we need to get rid of the ECHR, i.e. Robert Jenrick, they say there's existing legislation to protect everything that already is covered in the ECHR, so we wouldn't lose anything.
Well, two things for that. One, why are we listening to anything that Boris Johnson's saying? This guy is failed on everything he tried at Prime Minister, and he's trying to flog a book, so he's just saying any sort of controversial thing to try and flog his book. So let's, we're talking about trying to get rid of people's fundamental rights so Boris Johnson can make another couple of quid, which, that's really the context for this.
That's not quite fair. There's no real evidence that he's doing that to flog his book.
Well, he's got a book coming out next week, and suddenly he's started saying every sort of controversial thing he can think of, including we're going to invade the Netherlands. So, let's be realistic about what's going on here.
In the book, that's why he was telling us about that. But anyway,
in terms of what Robert Jenrick's saying, who's so committed to these freedoms that he thinks people should be arrested for saying God is great, obviously he doesn't believe that, because if all of those laws were in place already, then he wouldn't be trying to get rid of the ECHR because there'd be nothing to gain from doing so. In fact, what the ECHR does is make these laws much more accessible and much more usable. So rather than going through 12 centuries of English common law, as I might need to do for a client, which would cost them a large amount of money, I can defend my client's rights on the basis of a very simple, very easy to implement treaty.
I see. So what is the basis for these people talking about getting rid of it? Why are people like Robert Jenrick so adamant about getting rid of it if it's so, as you say, it helps us and is so useful to us?
Well, I think fundamentally, people like Robert Jenrick disagree with the very essence of the ECHR, which is the recognition in law that every person has fundamental equal value. And we know that. We've seen in the Conservative Party conference Kemi Badenoch saying that not all cultures have equal value. We've seen Robert Jenrick wanting to arrest people for simply expressing their religious faith. This is someone who wants a licence to persecute, and that's what getting rid of people's rights involves.
Kemi was talking about different cultures in the UK where, for example, they treat women differently to men. They see women as a lower standard of a human being. So, on one hand, you're talking about the likes of Robert Jenrick viewing people as lesser human beings, but Kemi Badenoch was referring to the people who actually look at women as lesser human beings.
So does that mean, is that the Conservative Party that looks at women as lesser human beings? Because this was a party that idolises Donald Trump, who's found to be a sexual offender. This is a party that oversaw the largest, an absolute failure to address rape and oversaw...
Calm down.
More...
Answer that question. You just said people like Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch persecute people and see them as lesser human beings. Kemi Badenoch was referring to people in this country who actually do that to women, for example. Yeah. They see them as lesser, not worthy of even answering the door and speaking to people.
Yeah, and Robert Jenrick's trying to allow people to enshrine that sort of behaviour in law. That's what the ECHR. That's what the ECHR prohibits. Is that a government?
Replace it with a British Bill of Rights, which would copy the same thing. The only difference is we wouldn't be at the besto of the European.
Why are British people different types of humans to Europeans? Why do we have different? Why should we have different rights to Europeans? We're all people. We're equal human beings.
What he's talking about is sovereignty, though. So that means that our country, our human rights, trumps any other convention of rights that comes in. So he can take the best bits from that, but what's the problem with us owning it? Why do we help to write it? Why are we unable now to write our own specifically for us?
Because sovereignty is about... well, there's two... The sort of sovereignty he's talking about is about a government being able to do whatever it wants to its citizens. The sovereignty that I'm talking about, that the ECHR protects, is sovereignty of the individual, which draws a line between over which the government cannot cross. No matter how much it's got a majority, no matter how passionately it believes it, the individual is important and is valuable, and the individual.
Why can't a British Bill of Rights do that?
Because the individual is equally valuable, whether you're British, whether you're French, whether you're from Azerbaijan, whether you're from Australia.
We wrote it. Why can't we? Why would Britain not be able to put that in our own Bill of Rights? Why? I'm just wondering, why do we need a European convention and just not? Why can't we just have our own? What's wrong with meeting our own individual needs? I mean, a lot of people are using this to get out of being sent back to where they've come from, if they've come from there illegally, and so on and so forth. That's, I think, the focus of the reason why a lot of us are looking at this and saying it's not on.
Because when we wrote that bill, when Winston Churchill, one of the greatest Conservative Prime Ministers, advocated for the European Convention on Human Rights, he advocated for a European convention, not a British convention, because human rights transcend borders. We are equally human, whether we're an immigrant, whether we're an asylum seeker, whether we're born in London, whether we're born in Australia.
So what makes you think that a British Bill of Rights won't do that? It will. What's the problem?
Well, because we've already got something that does that. It's called the European Convention on Human Rights. And most importantly, it's enforced by a court that transcends governments. So it is, and it is enforced by a court where we can all go, whatever nationality we're from, and which will enforce regardless of what country the rights are being violated.
Well, it depends if the politics... It depends whether there's not a political aspect to it as well, which is, I think, the problem with it. Well, Sam, thank you very much for joining. It's really good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Sam. And, of course, don't forget to tune in to the Camilla Tominey Show this Sunday at 9:30, where she will have her interview with Boris Johnson broadcast for the first time. And there are some bombshells in there, I promise you this. Take a look.
And I'm very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There he is, with an extra long tie, Donald Trump style. You know how Trump wears the long tie past his waist. Looking forward to that on Sunday, 9:30, a special extended show. Do not miss it.
All right, up next, we'll look at the reasons why some children are arriving at reception, that's reception class, unable to talk, wearing nappies and still using buggies. Don't miss that. That's next. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Right, up and down the country, many parents are preparing or have indeed already sent their child off to university.
Indeed, but sometimes it can leave parents struggling to cope with the, quote, empty nest syndrome their child leaves behind. So joining us now to discuss how to cope with sending off your sprogs to university, or not so sprogs, is broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy. Nice to see you this early. This is a real thing, isn't it? It's our colleague Paul Coitz, our sports expert, describes it as grief, sending your young adults off to uni and leaving the nest for the first time.
Yes, I think grief is the right word because it's an ending. And it's not just an ending with your relationship with your child. It changes from here on in. But it also is very much about your identity. Your identity as a parent is weakening. You'll always be that child's parent, but you're not going to have the same involvement on a daily basis. And so you're left to think, okay, well, what does my life look like going forward? What's my relationship? If you're in a relationship with a partner, how is that going to change? And like all elements of grief, there's going to be a bit of a process. There's going to be that transition period where you adjust to your new life, just as your sprogs, as you call them, are adjusting to their new, exciting phase of their life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, children are said to be arriving at school still in nappies and unable to properly communicate with classmates. And I know this is true because I've got first-hand experience of it, not with my son, but schools in my local area.
Well, the former Children's Commissioner for England, Anne Longfield, has warned children of being held back and not receiving the necessary support needed to be school-ready. Joining us now, parenting expert Nicole Ratcliffe. Nicole, this is a bit of a worrying trend, but a lot of people are trying to blame this on COVID. Where do you stand?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a case of blaming it on COVID. I would actually say we're probably in a situation where we're not empowering and educating new and expectant parents. So we've gone into COVID and we've got new parents that didn't really know what it was they were supposed to be doing. Nobody told them what it was that they should be doing or how they should be helping their child's brain development, what the milestones were, how to help those babies and those children reach those milestones. And they've just been trying to wing it on their own. The first 1,000 days are the most important days from conception for brain development. So we're talking about children now that are turning 4 years old that have missed out on those vital years of education and brain development at the beginning because the parents haven't been educated and supported. So we can't blame the children, and I don't think we can really blame the parents. We just haven't educated the parents to support the children right.
Where does parental responsibility come into play? I mean, who's to blame them? Someone's to blame. If kids are going into school with still wearing soiled nappies, someone's to blame. Something's gone wrong somewhere.
Absolutely. OK, so if I say it like this, we are very good as a society for blaming what's gone on in the past, rather than kind of turning around and saying, do you know what, we've made a bit of a mistake here. Our systems aren't set up to support and educate new parents, expectant parents, for what's really going to happen. We're not telling them what milestones are expected for them to be achieving, how to help those children get to there. And we're kind of going... Think about it like this, with these results that have just come out are showing that the people that are in poverty are the people that are struggling the most. They've got the children that are least ready for starting school. These parents don't have the money to be going to these baby classes. They probably don't have the money to be sending their children to nurseries. And they're probably just trying to wing it. And they're not getting support. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, Nicole, we're running out of time, but it's interesting you say that. It's very an interesting listen. That's Nicole Radcliffe and her views. I tend to blame the parents because I think the parents could actually do this, although it does sometimes, I think, cast a negative assertion on those with special educational needs. But lots of you have been emailing in with a report with regard to what's been happening in the local council election.
There's been a Reform by-election win in local council in Martin Ward in Blackpool. So Reform have overturned a 40% swing to win a council seat in Martin Ward. Might not seem significant, just a humble council seat up north, but lots of you saying this is a sign of things to come for perhaps a general election in the future. And of course, Reform not shy about the fact, Nigel Farage not shy about the fact that he has Labour in his sights. He's saying, we are coming after you, Labour. We don't care about the Tories. It's Labour we're coming after. And they've done exactly that in Martin Ward in Blackpool, winning that by-election council seat. Jim O'Neill was the winner of that.
Interesting, isn't it? Well, there's a shift afoot, because actually I noticed some of the questions as well to Keir Starmer today were not as warm as often they are. A lot of us asking lots of questions, and lots of you have been in touch with your thoughts. One of them is from Penny, said Argentina's resurfaced with vowing to get the Falklands exactly. More nonsense, I think, from this Labour government, which I think is a bit concerning.
Rule Britannia, no more. That's it from Britain's Newsroom for today. Thanks for joining us. Have a pleasant weekend. Nana's back tomorrow.
3 o'clock, be there, be square.
And I'm back in the morning. Good afternoon, Britain, with Tom and Emily is up next.
Iran's Ayatollah has given a rare public speech today where he calls Israel vampires, and we'll explain exactly what that means for global security.
Yes, it's quite shocking. And also, Sir Keir Starmer here in the UK, up in Liverpool, he insists that he will not sacrifice British industry to eco-zealots. Do you believe him? This £22 billion for carbon capture storage, will that decarbonise and keep our industries alive, or will it be an expensive flop?
All that to come, of course, after your weather forecast. Stay with us.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine start today for most of us. Sunny spells continuing into the afternoon, but it will turn increasingly cloudy and damp as the day progresses in the far northwest. In fact, already some light outbreaks of rain are pushing into the Western Isles. They'll reach parts of the far north of Scotland at times as well. Northern Ireland likewise seeing a thicker cloud and some light rain at times with a freshening breeze. But for eastern and southern Scotland, England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells, highs of 16 to 17 Celsius. So feeling pleasant enough, but perhaps with a bit more cloud cover compared with Thursday. We see those clouds persisting into the evening for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some persistent damp weather for western Scotland, but eastern areas, well, some late sunshine just before it goes down. Northern and central England, plenty of sunshine. Northern Ireland, though, a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of mostly light rain. Now, for the southern half of the UK, well, we'll see the cloud melting away into the evening, and under clear skies overnight, temperatures will fall away. Another chilly night's expected through the Midlands, eastern and southern and southeast England, but elsewhere, with thickening cloud and a strengthening breeze, and some outbreaks of rain pushing into Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's a milder night with temperatures staying in the double figures. So it's really only the east of England and some central parts where we'll see single figures first thing Saturday, and perhaps mid-single figures in some spots. Then we'll see a lot of fine weather once again across England and Wales, but with a bit more of a breeze and some cloud coming and going through the day. There's still scope for some sunshine at times, and mostly the more unsettled weather stays at bay until after dark, but it will reach Cornwall and it will affect